Good evening and Merry Christmas. I'd like to open the December 16, 2021 Planning Commission meeting with a roll call vote, please. Well, not a vote, just a roll call. That'd be fun.
Commissioner Fellers.
Present.
Commissioner Hackler.
Present.
Commissioner Hughes.
Present.
Commissioner Leeson.
Present.
Commissioner Long.
Present.
Commissioner Nichols.
Present.
Chairman Stewart.
Here.
Commissioner Watson. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Shivers. Item 2 on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look over the minutes, and did anyone find the same mistakes I did?
Oh,
I found one. Did you find one?
I found 2.
You found two.
It's the same mistake twice. Does that?
Well, you got me down as being present and voting yes, and I wasn't even here. That's what you found?
Okay, that's related to what I found.
All right. So roll call vote, Brad Long, it's a Y, and then you've got motion passed 6-0, which I think is correct, because I would be 7.
Okay, so members present, Brad Long should not be included.
That's, yes, that was, yes, correct.
Okay, so then the motion does go ahead and pass 6-0.
Yes.
In both cases, item 2 on the front page and item 4 on the second page remain at 6-0 with Brad Long and the yes vote being stricken in both cases.
And on the approval of minutes, it is 6-0, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you had said point 2. Was there something else on point 2? The
Well,
approval
it
of the minutes?
says members present, Brad Long, and I wasn't here.
Oh, just point number 1. Okay,
I think
yeah.
that's, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
Dave?
item 1, strike
Okay,
Brad Long
okay.
for members present. And then on item 4, under paragraph D for the roll call vote, strike Brad Long from the roll call vote along with his yes.
I very much appreciate you guys reading that.
Well,
It was a test and you passed.
it's okay if you're annoyed. We get it. We get it. Any other items regarding the minutes from the October 28th meeting? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to approve as revised.
I so move we accept the minutes from October 28th
As revised.
as revised.
Thank you.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as revised. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. How many? 7-0. Just want to be clear. All right. On to item 3, new business. Item number 1 is case number 21-07-REZ. Public hearing for the consideration of a request to rezone 5 acres at 300 Southeast 40th from AR Agricultural Residential District to RS Residential Suburban District. Mr. Shivers, would you please present the request?
Sure. The purpose of the rezoning tonight is to create a new 5-acre lot for a new home. The zoning today is agricultural residential, which is AR, with a minimum lot size of 40 acres. The larger property has a total size of 47.6 acres, and with the 5 acres removed, it will still be above the minimum 40 acres. The applicant is also concurrently going through our lot split process, which is purely administrative, where a surveyor proposes a new boundary. As long as it meets our subdivision regulations and our zoning, we approve it, and then it is created at the county. The proposed zoning is RS, stands for residential suburban. It is essentially single family for large lots, specifically for rural areas on the outside of town. This entire area within city limits, within our jurisdiction, is agricultural residential. Now, this is my Frankenstein map. Let me explain what we're looking at. The red horizontal line in the middle is 40th. What I've had to do is splice together 2 different maps to just give you a general idea of the zoning in the area. So all the green to the north, that is our agricultural residential areas. The white to the side is the airport, which is technically an annexed area. Areas to the bottom or the south of the black line, which is serving as 40th, is from Butler County GIS maps. All of that white speckly area is their Ag 40, agricultural 40. It is essentially the exact same as our AR. The yellow and the hashed areas down there is their rural residential and their rural estate zoning, which is very similar to our residential suburban, which is proposed this evening. The standard minimum lot size for RS is 12,000 square feet, which is a little bit over a quarter acre in size. However, it is limited by what utilities are available. In this area, there's rural water available, and the applicants will have to have on-site wastewater treatment. So by code, the minimum lot size that they can build is 3 acres. Now, their proposed they're working on is 5. If there's no public water, no public sewer, the minimum lot size is 6 2/3 acres. So that there's more than enough space for both a water well and a lagoon or other treatment device. All right, so this development is very consistent in the area. If you guys have reviewed the maps I provided, the entire area is agricultural with these homesteads. I made one more additional map, and essentially, I use these yellow boxes just to highlight some of the other smaller homesteads in the area. And by smaller, these are still 2 to 10 acre lots. It's just that the agricultural areas in between, you're looking at 40, 100 acre lots and larger for agricultural purposes. This is in our joint jurisdictional area with Butler County. Their meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday. They will review it and make a recommendation at that time. In the meantime, we at the city have reviewed it, and we think it is consistent and a good fit for the area, and we support your recommendation to approve the rezoning. And one additional note, since this is outside city limits, we sent notices to properties up to 1,000 feet away from the subject property, and I received a few phone calls, and that was it. No opinion one way or the other. And at this time, I'd like to invite the applicants up to talk a little bit more about it.
State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Tim Westcox, and currently my wife Crystal and I and our daughter, we live in Wichita at 3114 East Kite Circle in Wichita, Kansas. Thank you for having us here. Thank you for your time. My wife Crystal and I, we've been married for 4 years now. Sorry, 5 years now.
We knew what you meant.
You guys understand. And we have 2 young kids. We've lived in Wichita since we've been married. My wife grew up in Augusta and graduated from Circle, and I've lived in Wichita my entire life. Where we want to move, where we'd like to build is my in-laws, so my wife's sister and her husband, they own the property now. So our goal is just living with family and being together. So we'd like to build a house out there. We're not looking to build a business or anything like that. It's just being with family. So so that's our goal. We both still work in Wichita, so we would be making the commute. My wife works in the accounting industry, and I'm a police officer in Wichita. So we like to believe that we would be good contributions to the community, and we'd be a good fit for you guys. So we appreciate your guys' time, and we're very thankful and appreciative. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Shivers?
That's all I have.
Okay.
This was pretty straightforward.
We'll move to item B, which is the public hearing. At this time, we will open a public hearing for this case to rezone. Is there anyone here to speak regarding this case? Mrs. Fellers? No? Now's your chance. Okay, seeing no one to speak, we will close the public hearing and move to discussion by the Planning Commission. Questions, thoughts, concerns?
Jay, my question would be for you.
Okay.
By rezoning this, does it rezone the whole 40 acres to break it down into 5-acre lots, or just this one time?
It is just the legal boundary for what they're proposing to have their own lot. So the zoning I mentioned earlier is minimum 40 acres. So the bigger piece is 47.6 acres. So we're just subtracting 5 out of it. There's no reason to rezone the entire one. So the big piece will still remain the agricultural residential and be above minimum 40 acres. So it's just the 5-acre square. in which case the zoning wouldn't allow that to be subdivided.
So the actual dimensions and shape of this 5 acres will be determined when the surveying gets done and such as that?
Right, so I asked them to do just a preliminary sketch. They're working with Godecki just to make sure that it would work out. So we had the preliminary sketch, and so if the rezoning is approved, then they'll go and complete the survey and get that submitted.
Okay.
Mr. Shivers, can you talk a little bit, you touched on it with regard to public water supply. So because rural water is available, they're allowed a 3-acre minimum lot size as opposed to the larger 6.3, is that what you said?
Correct.
If rural water was not available.
So, right, so our ordinance, the zoning itself says the minimum 12,000 square feet, subject to utility requirements and our subdivision regulations. So when you flip to that part, the language there is if there is one public utility available, whether that's a public sewer or a public water, and the other has to be provided on site, that minimum is the 3. And if they have to provide their own for both private water and private wastewater, then they would be subject to a minimum of 6 2/3 acres. And so in this case, they have the rural water supply that they can connect to, and they'll do on-site wastewater treatment. So the bare minimum is 3 for this, and their proposed area is 5 acres. So exceeding that 3.
Okay, thank you.
So even if they haven't made contact with rural water to find out if they would allow another meter on the line for capacity's sake, there's enough in the big parcel that if they had 6 3/4 acre instead of 5 acres, they still won't break the minimum 20.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it says in here that the area is served by rural water district with adequate capacity, so.
Oh.
These rural water districts are set up for this. They're not set up for a 100 home subdivision to go in now.
Okay.
When you say wastewater, that's always a above ground lagoon,
It could be a lagoon. There's also septic tank options.
so it's an option.
Yeah. It's just providing, making sure there's enough space for them to do that. You know, lagoons typically take a lot of space. Typically underground options like septic tanks have lateral systems with the lateral lines for the liquids that go out and be absorbed in the soil. So honestly, both options do take up space. So that's part of the reason there's the minimum lot size.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's handled by Butler County. They have their own code requirements, depending on which route they choose to take, and that probably depends on their soil conditions and rock depth and how much you want to spend. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and I'm not an expert, but it provides that space.
Other thoughts?
Are you going to access 40th Street from your home, or are you going to drive to the existing driveway?
I believe our plan right now is to access from 40th Street.
You have to build somewhat of a driveway and cross the ditch and all that stuff.
Yes, sir.
Okay, other thoughts, other questions? If there are none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of case number 21-07-REZ, an application by Crystal Westcott on behalf of James and Colleen Beckley to rezone 5 acres at 300 Southeast 40th from AR Agricultural Residential District to RS Residential Suburban District for the reasons stated in the staff recommendation and heard at this public hearing.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recommend approval. Mr. Shivers, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Hackler,
Yes.
Commissioner Fellers,
Yes.
Chairman Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Nichols,
Yes.
Commissioner Long,
Yes?
Commissioner Leeson.
Yes.
All right, the motion to recommend approval passes 7-0.
All right. Do we, and remind me, do these don't go to the city commission, do they?
They do, yep. And
Okay.
so what happens is it goes to the Butler County Commission, and by agreement, with them. Their job is to review all rezoning and special use permit applications to fit with their long-term plans. And typically, they usually work with us on a recommendation. And then both your recommendation and theirs will go to City Commission in January, where they review that information, the minutes, the recommendations, and they'll hold their vote.
Okay, so likely are we early enough for them to get on the first meeting in January, or?
The standard is usually 3 because there is a wait period by state statute, so if there was a protest petition or something like that, it allows for that time.
Okay.
So, motion recommended unanimous, so I will follow up with you once we get confirmation from the county that you will be on the agenda.
Thank you.
Bet, good luck.
All right, item 4, any old business?
No old business.
Item 5, staff items.
Okay, guys, I have a 2-hour presentation set up. Do we need any bathroom breaks first? No.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second that motion.
Third.
All right, no, this will be actually very brief. This is more of a notice that staff has been directed to consider some ordinance amendments in 2 areas. The first is concerning food trucks or mobile food vendors in ordinance speak. Essentially, as of today, we don't have any regulations that apply to food trucks. It's obviously something that's been getting a lot more popular over the last decade. The big cities have seen a lot of this. They've had a chance to put rules in place and then tweak them and see what works and doesn't work. And as we all saw in the last year, we've had a lot more food trucks coming to Dorado as well. So we're in the early stages of proposing some baseline regulations on that. Nothing crazy, just kind of doing the minimum what works with other cities as well. Things that talk about kind of what zoning they can park in, for how long, it addresses serving from right-of-ways, signage on the trucks or trailers, just things of that nature, proximity to residential and existing restaurants. So these are things that we're going to talk about more in January and February as we move forward. The second part is actually an even more minor and yet specific change. Our subdivision regulations talk about, specifically with our extension of sewer mains for new developments, talks about how the full cost of that is to be on the developer. There's been some interest from higher up in the city to reword that language to make it more flexible, so that maybe depending on the project or the size, the city maybe has that flexibility to chip in or work with a larger developer in the future, rather than being locked in by code to say, regardless of what you have, you pay for the sewer mains. So that's a very specific change. It essentially gives our city commission and city manager a little bit of leeway when we negotiate and work with very large developers when they meet with us. And so that's it. Just a heads up that these are things we'll be talking about early in 2022. I'll tack on as well that the last case we reviewed was 323 South Main, the public assembly venue. The city commission did approve that unanimously at their last meeting, or the following meeting after a planning commission.
Okay. Mr. Shivers, when you began discussing the mobile food vendor regulations, I think you stated that staff has been directed
Yes.
to consider regulations. Who gives that direction?
In this case, it's our city manager, David Dillner.
Okay.
Now, this was already a conversation within the city, just our own observations, seeing where the trucks are going, that we've had more of them, and consideration that as of today, well, as far as I know, we didn't have any particular problems that came up this year. It's more of just a preemptive, let's just do some baseline things, maybe limit sales from right away or in residential areas where lights and sounds and generators get noisy. And so that's what it is. So we discussed it for a long time, and then we got to the point where it's like, okay, let's go ahead and proceed with it.
Okay. But it's not KDHE directing the city to
No.
put something together?
No, just the city,
All
yeah.
right.
So we'll
Thank
talk
you.
about rental. I mean, do they pay the city a fee to park in the city?
So part of the consideration at this time is I've spoken with Tabitha, our city clerk, and there's some interest in also possibly doing a registration where there could be a fee. They may have to provide locations, depending on where they're going to go, prove that they have sales tax certificates, things of that nature. So at the moment, and it's still early, it might be that our code has some more of the regulations on where they go, how long are they there, the signage. That's not unusual for cities that have that in their zoning ordinance. And specifically, in our supplemental district regulations, we have a section, Section 8, called temporary uses permitted. That would be the area this would be most likely to go, which is a section that already deals with Christmas tree sales, real estate offices, seasonal sales, carnivals and circuses, temporary uses. And so that's where we put it. So it'll probably go hand in hand with some type of registration as well as our regulations. But
So
it's
quick
still
question, so food trucks are or are not generating tax dollars for the city of El Dorado,
They are generating sales tax,
sales tax?
yes, and I believe that's based on the destination. So if they're parked in town, they would have to submit that sales tax under our taxing jurisdiction.
Okay.
Point of sale essentially
That's the word, yeah.
is what determines that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well, I'm not sure anybody up here is looking forward to that, but we will address it as required.
And so what will likely happen is that we'll probably bring some more specific proposals as far as just these baseline regulations. A lot of the larger cities have very extensive regulations, but they also have food truck parks too on city property that they host. So what we'll probably do is look at baseline regulations and see how that goes, and if there's specific issues or problems that occur, then we can always do amendments from there.
So you think that January, we'll probably have a discussion on this, and you'll bring some things to the table here on regulations from other cities, and then maybe by February, you want to have a final tally, or, I mean, it's going to take a while?
It'll be around that time. We're also coordinating internally. We've already been talking internally about some proposed regulations and wording and where it goes. But we all have to be on the same page as well on the staff side, so probably.
Could be March, I mean, you talk, it could
Sure, it
drag
could
out.
be. So the overall goal is really just to have some things, some baseline regulations in place by the warm season.
Yeah,
So once we have the food trucks coming through,
yeah.
So by the warm season, you mean 3 days ago?
yes.
All right. Any other items in for staff items?
That's all I have.
All right. We move to item 6, adjournment. I'd entertain a motion.
I motion we adjourn.
All right, it's moved, seconded, and thirded to adjourn. All those opposed can stay here if they want. Thank you.